The chill wind, sharp with the scent of approaching autumn, whipped at John Hickshue's weathered face as he stood on the cliff overlooking the turbulent, gray Atlantic. He hadn't visited this spot in over 5 years. The gulls cried overhead, their calls a haunting echo of lost times. He clutched his worn, leather-bound journal tighter, the weight of it familiar and comforting in his trembling hands. The salt spray kissed his cheeks, mirroring the tears he refused to let fall. 5 years. 5 years since she'd been taken. 5 years since the light went out of his world. He traced the familiar curves of a faded photograph tucked within the pages of his journal. Her smile, incandescent and bright, still held the power to steal his breath. Sarah. His Sarah. They had loved this place, this wild, untamed stretch of coastline. They'd built their lives on the bedrock of this land, weathering storms, both literal and metaphorical, together. He could almost hear her laughter now, light and airy as the wind itself. The way she used to say, "Hickshue, you ol' rascal." The journal was a repository of their life. It was filled with pressed flowers, dried leaves, sketches, and poetry, their shared language. It held his secrets, his regrets, and most importantly, his love for her, etched into every line, every carefully chosen word. After she was gone, he didn't think he could write again. But one day, he picked it up and started writing. He needed to remember, to survive. He opened the book, the pages brittle with age, and began to read aloud, his voice raspy with disuse. He chose a passage where the words poured out in a rush, a memory of their first shared love, their young years. The summer of '63, the air was thick with honeysuckle and the promise of forever, he read, his voice cracking. We were young, foolish, and utterly convinced we were the only two people on earth. We danced under the stars, kissed in the rain, and swore eternal devotion. It sounds so naive now, but it was real, it was everything. He paused, the memory a bittersweet ache. They had faced hardships, of course. Children gone too soon, financial struggles, and the inevitable slow march of time. But through it all, their love, their bond, had remained an unwavering constant. He closed his eyes, letting the ocean's roar fill the silence. It wasn't just love, he whispered to the wind. It was a partnership, a team. We were better together. As if responding to his prayer, a glint of sunlight caught his eye. It was a small, silver locket lying near the edge of the cliff. He recognized it immediately. Sarah's. The one he had given her on their 25th wedding anniversary. He hadn't seen it in years. He picked it up, his fingers tracing the delicate filigree design. It opened with a click, revealing 2 tiny photographs, their wedding portrait, and a recent picture of the two of them at their 50th anniversary party. He felt a fresh wave of grief wash over him, the pain raw and immediate. How could it have gotten here? He turned and looked down the cliff face. The path was steep, treacherous, and certainly not safe for a man his age. Yet, the locket had not simply fallen from the edge. Someone had placed it there. Someone who had been watching him. He felt a cold, unsettling prickle of awareness on the back of his neck. Was it a prank? A cruel joke? Or, somehow, connected to the strange happenings that had started to plague him after Sarah's passing? A few months ago, strange things started happening. Missing items, rearranged furniture, whispers on the phone when he picked it up. He had dismissed it all to age and grief. Now, with the locket, he wasn't so sure. The thought of it being anyone, a malicious person, just a stranger, made his blood run cold. It was as though Sarah was trying to communicate with him. He made the decision there and then. Whatever was happening, he had to find out why. He clutched the locket tight and began the slow, careful descent down the cliff, ignoring the protesting twinge in his knee. The climb was difficult, the loose shale shifting under his boots. Each step was a battle against the fear that clawed at him. As he went, a small, weathered cottage came into view at the bottom of the cliff. He had never seen it before. A wisp of smoke curled lazily from its chimney, beckoning him like a lost hope. When he reached the cottage, he was greeted by a soft voice coming from the inside, a warm melody that seemed almost familiar. He knocked at the door. The door creaked open, revealing a woman with eyes that held a depth of kindness. She was of an age with him, her silver hair pulled back in a loose braid, her face etched with the wisdom of a long life lived. She wore a simple homespun dress, and the air around her smelled of wood smoke and lavender. "Can I help you, dear?" she asked, her voice gentle as a summer breeze. I found something," he stammered, holding up the locket. "On the cliff. My wife's. I didn't recognize this place." The woman's eyes widened with understanding. Come in, out of the wind." She ushered him inside the cottage, which was surprisingly spacious and filled with a warm, inviting atmosphere. A fire crackled merrily in the hearth, and the scent of baking bread filled the air. The inside was even better than the outside. It looked as if time had stopped and they were in some ancient period. "My name is Ilara," the woman said, offering him a seat by the fire. "And I believe that locket belongs to you. And to Sarah." John was instantly comfortable with her, though wary. He sat down on a worn, overstuffed armchair and took a deep breath. "How did you know?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Ilara smiled, a knowing, enigmatic smile. "Some things transcend the veil, John. Sarah and I were friends. On the other side." A jolt of disbelief coursed through him. This can't be real. Was this grief finally taking hold? Was this all just a dream? "I know it sounds impossible," Ilara said, as if reading his thoughts. "But there are things in this world, and beyond, that we cannot explain. I know that Sarah still cares for you. The recent events, the misplaced items, are her way of getting your attention." "Why?" he asked, bewildered. "Why would she do this?" Ilara looked at him with compassion. "Because she has something to tell you. And something to show you." The conversation with Ilara was the first step in an unexpected journey, a journey that delved deep into the past, uncovering family secrets and long-buried truths. She revealed that his great-grandfather had been a seafarer. His journals, filled with maps and cryptic notations, spoke of a hidden treasure, a secret that had been passed down through generations. They both had been connected in some way or form. "Sarah knew this, John," Ilara said, her eyes shimmering. "She knew about the treasure. She was very good at connecting dots. She left you clues. And she wants you to find it." The clues, it turned out, were hidden within the pages of the journal he had carried with him every day since her death. He had read the poems over and over. Now, she wanted him to find them. Ilara helped him decipher the cryptic messages, each one leading him to a new location, a new piece of the puzzle. The search began, turning his life upside down. He visited forgotten corners of their shared history. He met relatives he hadn't spoken to in years. He retraced the steps of his past, and the more he learned, the more it felt like Sarah had arranged it all. But there was a hidden layer. One of the clues led him to an old, abandoned lighthouse on a remote island. He had to confront his fear of heights, the wind a fierce adversary. He found a hidden compartment within the lighthouse. Inside, he found a letter written in Sarah's familiar hand. The letter spoke of a hidden compartment in the family home where his wife told him a secret of her own. When he got back to the home, he looked for the compartment. He spent days. He had to turn the entire house upside down, removing furniture, pulling up floorboards. Finally, when the last possible spot was gone, he found it, a hidden space behind the fireplace. Inside, he found a series of letters and photographs detailing a long-held family secret. A secret that went back generations. The secret revealed that his grandfather, the man who had owned the ranch before him, had been involved in some shady dealings. He had been a part of a land grab in the area during the Second World War. He was working with local officials to illegally acquire land from other families. John had to confront the fact that his family's wealth, and the very foundation of their lives, had been built on injustice and betrayal. He was crushed. He felt like everything he believed in was a lie. It was as if his entire life, his entire history, had been rewritten. He didn't know how to reconcile this new information with the man he thought his grandfather was, or the family he had always believed himself to be a part of. Just when he felt at his lowest, he found another clue in his journal. Truth brings light, but action brings change. Sarah wanted him to use this truth, to undo the wrongs of the past. He returned to Ilara, his face pale. "I don't know what to do," he said, the weight of his family's past crushing him. Ilara looked at him with unwavering resolve. You have a choice to make, John. You can choose to ignore the truth, to keep the secrets buried. Or, you can choose to face them to right the wrongs. Sarah is counting on you. With Ilara's guidance, John began to unravel the details of his grandfather's actions. He located the descendants of the families who had lost their land. He researched land records. He pieced together the evidence, building a case. The process was long and difficult, but Ilara's support was his strength. Her understanding and her belief in him. He would eventually confront the local authorities who had helped his grandfather. He would provide the evidence he had gathered. He would work to ensure that the land was returned to those who had been dispossessed, and the remaining families are compensated. He felt a profound sense of justice. His family's legacy was tarnished, and the truth was painful. But for the first time in a long time, he also felt a sense of peace. The act of confronting his family's history was cathartic. He was doing right by Sarah and everyone else in his life. Finally, after months of hard work, the case was closed. The land, or its financial equivalent, was returned to the descendants of those who had been wronged. The community, though deeply hurt by what was revealed, began the process of healing. One evening, after the final court hearing, John went back to the cliff. The wind still blew, and the sea still roared, but something had changed. The sun was setting, painting the sky with hues of orange and purple. He could almost feel Sarah's presence beside him. He opened his journal, turning to the final page. The last clue. A simple line written in Sarah's hand. Look to the future. As he gazed out at the horizon, he saw something he hadn't noticed before. In the distance, a new lighthouse was being built. It was a beacon of hope, a symbol of renewal. It was almost as if Sarah had always had the future in mind. He realized what she was telling him. He was given a second chance, a chance to live again, to find a new purpose, a new direction. As he continued staring at the horizon, he saw Ilara coming towards him. She was smiling. It's time to move on, John, she said, her voice soft and comforting. Your work here is done. He looked at her, his eyes filled with both gratitude and a touch of sadness. He had grown to love her. But what about us? What about the connection we have? The bond with Sarah? Ilara smiled warmly and replied, Sarah is always going to be a part of both our lives. However, the time has come for you to find a new path, one that will bring you peace. But where do I start? How do I do it? Look at the lighthouse, John. It is a beacon of hope, a symbol of a fresh start. There are so many new beginnings that await you. He hugged her. He knew that he would never forget her, and she knew that their path had to separate at that moment. He would never forget all her help to him. John turned and watched Ilara turn away from him. He knew that this was their final goodbye. Then he was on his own. He then walked towards the lighthouse. He would start at the bottom of it. He would have a fresh start. He had a whole new world to discover. He still had his journal, and he knew he would use it to build a new future. As he ascended the lighthouse, the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the landscape. The wind whispered secrets in his ear, of distant lands and unknown oceans. He felt a spark within him, a flame that had been smothered for so long. He lit the lamp, the warm glow illuminating the darkness. With a sense of purpose and belonging, John climbed the ladder, higher and higher, until he reached the top. The world stretched out before him, endless and full of possibility. He raised his head, letting the wind carry away his doubts, his fears. As the sun dipped below the horizon, he felt a presence at his side. It was Sarah, the one he had known, the one who was now a part of the world beyond. They stood together at the edge of the world, the wind whipping their faces, their hearts beating as one. Thank you, John, she said, her voice carried by the wind. You found yourself, and you found me. He smiled, his heart full of joy, his spirit renewed. He knew that no matter what lay ahead, he would face it with courage, with the love that they shared. And as he stood there, the world at his feet, he knew that the journey was far from over. But he was no longer alone.